Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is The Need of Consistency by the Imperator AMORC. An article from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 12, Number 3, April 1934. The Thought of the Monk, The Need of Consistency by the Imperator AMORC. I hope I may be excused for repeating a very old story for the sake of illustrating and point, but I cannot help but referring to the little fellow that claimed that he was not afraid of ghosts or spirits and walked bravely past the cemetery at night while whistling a lively tune. He undoubtedly belonged to the same little group of humans in which we find one little girl asking her boyfriends if they believed in fairies and salamanders. And one boy replied by saying, "No, I do not, but do not talk so loudly because they may hear you." It is one thing to have a sort of superficial belief in faith and another to live it. As the months and years have passed by, and I have had the opportunity to analyze the innermost thoughts of 100,000 or more people who have written to me about their personal problems in life or discussed with me their religious or philosophical beliefs and principles in life, I have come to the conclusion that the most serious problem that confronts most of the perplexed in this world today is that of the lack of consistency in their thinking and acting. Almost universally throughout the world today, among the educated, enlightened, and even those only partially educated, there is a fundamental belief in the immortality of the soul or the immortality of the real and true self in man. This belief, however, is apparently purely superficial and something that is glibly talked about and reiterated in ritualism, prayers, and religious or philosophical conversations, but it is not deep and is not a conviction, and is in no wise a real part of the true faith of a majority of these persons. With the least provocation and with every more or less serious incident in life, this belief in immortality is suddenly questioned and doubted and treated as though it were a problematic matter, not yet proved. Surely the belief in immortality is a fundamental part of the creeds and doctrines of the Christians, the Jews, the Buddhists, and the Mohammedans, and a number of other religious sects. Going among the most civilized nations of the world, we find that a majority profess to have the Christian or Jewish faith as their God in life. And yet among these very people, one finds that this principle of immortality, instead of being a fundamental conviction that should guide and influence all of the thinking and acting in their lives, is merely a vague hope that is seriously questioned and doubted or cast aside in the consideration of any important problem. A person who believes with the utmost conviction that the soul or inner self in man is immortal and will live again in the hereafter somewhere will have all the affairs of his life colored by this belief, and certainly all of his analytical thinking in connection with many of the problems of life will be affected by this fundamental conviction. If there is a part of us that is immortal and will live again, it must be a more important part, a more real part, a more omnipotent part of ourselves than the outer personality. In other words, a belief in the doctrine of immortality must rest upon the belief and conviction that man is dual and that one part of him is an earthly, corruptible, mortal shell, while the other part is a divine and incorruptible part with eternal life as its essence. With such a firm belief and conviction, man most certainly must view his present life and present affairs from an entirely different angle than that from which he would view life if he believed that all there was to man was that which he senses objectively, and which is mortal, corruptible, and of temporary earthly existence. The fact that the real part of man will live again would indicate that this earthly existence is merely a temporary transit stage of existence, and that our experience, trials, and tribulations here are not the ultimate aim of life at all. It would also indicate that man has a greater purpose in living than merely being here on earth, and it would tend to reveal to us the fact that man can attain an ideal state in which there must be justice, love, mercy, and a proper reward for right thinking and right living. The world scheme of our life here on earth and our experiences and development is explained in an entirely different light if we have a firm conviction in the doctrine of immortality. But again, I say, despite the fact that a majority of the religions of the world teach this doctrine of immortality, and the followers of these religions glibly repeat that doctrine and accept it as part of their understanding of life, they cast aside the belief in all of their important considerations. Take, for instance, a letter now before me from a woman who is not a member of our organization, but who has been reading our literature and our books for a number of years in an attempt to follow some of our principles. She claims to have a good understanding of the Christian religion and to be a firm believer in all of the metaphysical principles taught by our organization and others. In this letter, she wants to show me how her prayers to the cosmic, or her personal appeals to the God of the universe and to Jesus the Christ, were answered at certain critical times. She states that in those days, recently, when she had to face a very necessary and important operation in a carefully selected hospital with the assistance of a very competent physician, she was suddenly brought face to face with the realization that her transition, if it occurred during the operation, would leave her little child alone in the world. This she desired to prevent, if possible, through prayer. Then, according to her letter, she says she took her Bible with her to the hospital, and for several days preparatory to the operation, she constantly read the 23rd Psalm. And she says, as I went under the ether, I kept repeating, I shall fear no evil. Undoubtedly, her Christian friends and even the pastor of her church would have looked upon this as a beautiful example of religious faith. But was it? Why, of all the beautiful thoughts expressed by Jesus and to be found in the Old and New Testament of the Christian Bible, did she select the one proclaiming that she feared no evil? Christianity and many other religions teach that there is no death and that it is merely a change, and this change represents one of the most glorious, beautiful experiences in life, and something that should be anticipated with sublime joy, or at least considered as a divine decree bringing sublime relief from sorrow and the beginning of a new and better life. Why then should any Christian or any Buddhist or any Mohammedan or any other have any fear of death? And why should such a person, in the face of possible transition, proclaim himself as fearing no evil with the hope that transition might be prevented and the decree of God set aside? Is this consistent with the belief in the immortality of the soul and the statement that there is no death? Why look upon transition as an evil, and to prevent such an evil coming to one's life, falsely proclaim, I fear no evil? Surely this person did fear transition, or did fear what she believed was death. Her exclamation or proclamation that she feared no evil was therefore untrue, and was intended to serve the same purpose as the whistling done by the little boy as he passed the cemetery. She did not mean that she feared evil at the hands of the physician, for if she had really believed the physician was incompetent and would do evil to her willfully, she would have been consistent enough in these material beliefs to have selected another physician or have postponed the operation. It was the fear of the unknown rather than the known that caused this dear woman to weaken in all of her religious faith and try to bolster up her courage in the face of her doubts by proclaiming to herself that she feared no evil. In the thousands of telegrams and letters which we receive from persons who are ill or who have been injured and who ask for immediate help, there is nearly always the statement that they do not want to die and that they fear death. Many persons have written to us in regard to this fear and have asked what can be done to overcome it. One such letter received recently is typical of a great many. This person said that she feared to go to her church regularly because she often noticed that one more member of the congregation had passed out of this life, and the absence of these persons and the memorials to them expressed in the church reminded her constantly of the fact that she, too, was getting old and approaching the time when transition might be expected, and it gave her a shudder to think that her life was about to close or that she had reached the end of the long road here on earth. She said that she had even forced herself to find excuses for not attending the funerals of some of those persons who were well known to her, because every time she looked upon a lifeless figure in a casket, she was reminded of the fact that her time for transition was also close at hand. This is not an exceptional case, and if you think it is, just make inquiries among your friends and acquaintances and start talking about transition and so-called death, and speak of it as something that you do not fear. Speak of it as though it were an event that you really believed was a glorious experience and one which all of us should anticipate with a calmness and a complete freedom of fear, hesitancy, or doubt. You will see at once that you are taken as one who is strange in his beliefs. Your attitude will be challenged, and your calmness will be looked upon as a sacrilegious pose. Why should this be? We go to sleep each night calmly, deliberately, and fearlessly, placing our consciousness and all our worldly instincts and affairs into a state of suspension, not knowing whether that period of suspended consciousness and animation will be long or short, temporary or permanent. But we have a conviction that we will awaken. We have a firmly fixed faith that the morning will come to use, and that we shall see sunrise and once again go about our affairs. We even plan at night what we will do in the morning. We even arrange our financial and other material affairs in such a manner that they will hang in the balance during the night, and we have no doubt but what in the morning we shall be able to adjust them. If each one of us approach the nighttime hours of suspended animation with the same attitude as most persons approach transition, we would be in a furor every night, and every individual would be busy settling his estates, arranging decisive actions, instructing others how to proceed with his affairs in the morning, and dissolve our earthly ties so that others might assume our positions and our powers. We do not do this, however, because of our faith in life and in the continuity of life. We believe we shall live again in the morning. Certainly the period of suspension during the night is fraught with as many unknown experiences and represents a condition as little known to us as so-called death. And yet we have no fear of sleep and do have a tremendous fear of transition. If all of us believed in the immortality of life as firmly and as truly as we believed in the continuity of life day after day through our waking and sleeping periods, we would approach any serious crisis in our life with the same calmness and the same consistency of attitude as we approach the hour of sleep. The excuse that transition might find us unprepared in our worldly affairs and in our worldly nature is no excuse but merely an explanation of our inconsistency in thinking and acting. If there is an immortal part of ourselves and a mortal part, then we must know that the mortal, corruptible part may be separated from the immortal at almost any hour or any time of our earthly existence. If we are consistent in our beliefs and faiths, we must realize that the only one sure thing about our earthly existence is the fact that transition is always imminent and is inevitable. We may have doubts about everything else pertaining to this earthly life, and everything pertaining to our earthly span of existence may be a problem and a quandary to us. We may not know from whence we came or whither we are going, but one thing we can be sure of, and that is that transition is inevitable, and the hour for it is unknown and may be close at hand. For this reason, we should be consistent enough in our thinking and in our beliefs and faiths to be prepared always for that which we know is inevitable and probably imminent. It should make no difference to us whether this day or this hour or the next day or another hour is to be our last on this earth or not. We should be as ready to close our lives completely on this earth plane each day or any day as we are ready to close our activities at any hour of the evening and suspend our consciousness and labors and go to sleep. We should so guide our affairs and maintain our character and our morals so that the coming of transition at any moment will not find us filled with fear or regrets. This would be consistency. And it is a strange thing that only among the mystics who have attained a mystical understanding of life and who have deliberately set out to perfect their thinking and their living do we find this attitude of preparedness and this readiness for the great experience of transition. Unless we are consistent in our faith and our beliefs, they are of absolutely no value to us at any time, for the laws and principles constituting our moral, religious, and philosophical beliefs and code in life can serve us only when we are convinced of their universality, of their fidelity, and of their inevitability. With such faith, we can live consistently and in this wise attune ourselves with the operation of cosmic and universal laws, and find in this calmness joy and peace profound. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.